Please, you must take this. You need it more than I do.
A homeless man possessed only one single meal. He sacrificed his last sandwich for a starving elderly couple. This desperate act of selfless kindness was witnessed. The next day, a powerful millionaire came knocking for him. The wind was biting cold, the kind that makes your bones ache, but I barely felt it because I finally had food. I stared at the plain sandwich in my hand. It was a tiny victory, yet it felt like the most valuable thing in the world. Just as I was about to bite, I saw them, an old couple across the street who looked completely broken and desperate. My stomach yelled at me to eat and survive, but my heart, surprisingly, told me that giving was the only way to truly live. The decision felt heavy, like a huge rock dropped into a quiet lake. The night was freezing, so cold it felt like the air was sucking the warmth right out of me. I had been Ethan for 42 years, and for a long time now, the only home I had was the street corner. But tonight was different. I remembered the smell of my mom's cooking, the sound of a warm shower, and the feeling of real carpet under my feet. Those memories were ancient history now, like they belonged to someone else entirely. It was hard to believe I had once been a normal person with a steady job and a warm place to sleep. I had finally gathered enough loose change and coins from doing small jobs and asking nice people for help. It took me 3 full days of scraping by to get this money. I used every penny to buy my treasure, a small sandwich and a bottle of water. This wasn't just a snack, it was my one shot at survival for the next 24 hours. If I ate this, I could keep going until morning. If I didn't, the hunger and the cold might become too much. It was a matter of life or death, right there in the wrapper. My dog, Buddy, was huddled right beside me. He's my best friend, and he thumped his tail softly on the pavement. He knew I was happy because I was holding food. My stomach was making loud, angry noises, rumbling like a distant thunderstorm, but inside, I felt a calm peace, knowing the battle for tonight was almost won. Buddy was a mixed-breed dog, scruffy and loyal. He hadn't eaten a full meal in 2 days either, but he never complained. He just gave me those soft, brown eyes, full of trust. I had even thought about sharing a tiny piece with him, but I knew he needed proper dog food, not just my dry bread. For once, it felt like the huge, cold world had been a little bit kind to me. I slowly unwrapped the paper around the sandwich, breathing in the amazing smell of the bread. It smelled like pure life. I was ready to eat it all up, bite by precious bite. But just as I lifted the sandwich, I saw something. An old couple was standing nearby. They looked so worn out. Their clothes were old and very thin, barely enough to keep them warm, and their faces were pale, like they were sick. Their eyes were full of silent, deep sadness that made my own heart ache. They were whispering to each other, clearly arguing about something private and painful. I could hear small, sharp intakes of breath, like they were fighting tears. The man was holding the woman's hand, trying to be strong, but both of them looked extremely weak. They looked like they hadn't eaten anything all day, maybe longer. I watched them, and a horrible feeling started in my gut. My first, selfish thought was, "Hide the food! Protect your meal!" That's what the streets teach you. You learn quickly that generosity is stupid. It's a weakness that gets you killed. But then, a different voice started talking in my head. It was the voice of kindness, the voice of Ethan, before the streets took him. I used to be a regular guy, and I remembered having someone I cared about, someone I would give my last meal to without thinking twice. That life was gone now, but the memory was still there, sharp and clear. I thought about my old grandmother, who always said, "The only thing you truly own is the good you do." If I ate the sandwich, I'd just survive. If I gave it away, I'd be good. The couple slowly walked over and sat down on the hard curb across the street from me. The old woman's stomach let out a loud, embarrassing growl that echoed slightly in the quiet street. She quickly looked down, hiding her face in her scarf because she was ashamed. My hands started shaking hard. My body wanted the food so badly that my fingers were cramping around the wrapper. I looked at Buddy, and he just tilted his head, waiting to see what I would do. He seemed to know this was a huge moment. The sandwich felt suddenly heavy, like a hot brick in my hand. I knew my options. I could eat it, stop my own awful hunger, and try to forget the couple. I would be safe for one night. I'd survive. Or I could share it. I could give away my only meal and risk going hungry again tonight. maybe even fainting from weakness tomorrow. It was a terrible choice, a truly cruel test that life throws at you when you're at your lowest. But I knew in my heart that being kind was more important than being comfortable. Kindness was more important than my own hunger. I had to do the right thing, no matter how much it hurt, even if it meant risking my own health. "Excuse me," I called out softly, trying to make my voice sound gentle so I wouldn't scare them. The couple looked up fast, their eyes wide in surprise that anyone was talking to them, let alone me. I walked over slowly. I held out the sandwich and the bottle of water. I didn't let myself hesitate this time. If I stopped even for a second, I knew I would take it back. "Here," I said, keeping my voice low. "You honestly look like you need this way more than I do. Please take it." The old man's eyes got really wide. He looked shocked. "No, son, please. You must eat it. We saw you working for change all day. You're starving too. You need it for yourself," he said, trying to push my hand away with a weak gesture. But I insisted, pressing the food right into their hands until they had to take it. "Please," I said, giving them a small, weak smile. "I'll find a way to manage. I always do. Just take care of your wife, sir." Buddy sat right next to me, watching the whole exchange. His tail thumped the ground a few times, a slow rhythm that sounded proud, like he approved of my sacrifice. Tears started filling the old woman's eyes as she accepted the meal, holding it to her chest like a newborn child. The thanks I saw in their faces was a powerful light, brighter and warmer than any food could ever be. It was the deepest gratitude I had ever witnessed. They broke the sandwich slowly, making sure to share it exactly in half, being completely fair. They ate each tiny bite with such care, like it was a huge, expensive feast they didn't want to end. They drank the water carefully, passing the bottle back and forth between them. Watching them eat made me feel warm inside, a wonderful feeling that was much stronger than the hunger, still screaming in my stomach. The warmth wasn't in my belly, but in my soul. For the first time in many days, I felt like a real person again, someone who mattered. I wasn't invisible or forgotten. I was connected to other people through a small act of human compassion. Buddy put his head on my lap, sensing my quiet, deep happiness and peace. The world had taken almost everything important from me, my money, my home, my family's pictures. But right then, in that moment, I knew it couldn't take my ability to care for others. That was the one thing I would always have. That choice defined who I truly was. The old man introduced himself as Walter, and his wife was Eleanor. They told me their painful story while they ate. They had lost their home and all their money because of huge medical bills after Eleanor got very sick. They had nowhere left to go. Their kids lived far away and they had just stopped answering their phone calls, completely ignoring them. "We're like ghosts now, invisible to everyone who used to care," Eleanor whispered, her voice full of pain. I nodded slowly. I knew exactly what that feeling of being a ghost was like. Even though our stories were a little different, I was alone and they were together. The pain we felt was the same. Life had pushed us all out to the edges of the world. Now, staying alive depended only on the random kindness of strangers. That night, we sat together on the freezing cold sidewalk. 3 lonely people and 1 loyal dog found comfort just in sharing their sadness and their quiet history. They told me about their grandchildren and their old jobs. As the night got deeper, I felt the sharp reality of my situation. I had nothing left at all, not even a crumb. My stomach was twisting painfully, cramping and aching from emptiness, but I tried to ignore it. I watched Buddy curl up close to me, resting his head on my worn-out jacket, offering the small comfort of his breathing. Walter tried to give me back a piece of the sandwich he had saved for me, a tiny piece of crust. "You needed that more," I insisted, gently pushing his hand back. "I've been hungry before. I can handle tonight. Finish it, please." The couple looked at me with pure surprise. In their eyes, I wasn't just some messy person from the street. I was a man with real respect and a huge heart. I was someone who still had enough goodness to give away his last thing and still look after others. Later, the couple left, promising they would never forget what I did and that they would pay it forward. I found a safe, sheltered spot near an old, empty building to sleep. Buddy snuggled in close to me for warmth. The hunger was still a monster, a dull, constant ache, but I closed my eyes and whispered a small prayer of thanks. At least they'll go to sleep with full bellies tonight. Sleep was rough. I shivered constantly from the cold air, and I kept waking up every hour. The biting cold seeped into my bones, making my joints stiff. But there was a strange, good feeling in my heart, a warmth that countered the frost. I didn't fix the world, but I made someone's night much better. For a guy who had nothing, that meant everything. The next morning, I woke up to Buddy licking my hand, a rough, comforting wake-up call. My body ached all over from sleeping on the cold ground, but my spirit felt surprisingly light and hopeful. I got up and started walking the streets again, looking for any small job, any way to earn money for food. I hoped someone would offer me work, or maybe just spare some change. When I passed the corner shop, I remembered the night before and smiled faintly. I had no idea that the decision I made about that sandwich was about to completely change my life forever. I had made a choice that the universe was now repaying. Fate, I realized much later, had been watching quietly, just waiting for the exact right moment to start its plan for me. It was like a test, and I had passed without even knowing I was taking it. I kept walking, exhausted, feeling worse hunger than the day before, but I kept pushing forward, putting one weary foot in front of the other. Suddenly, a fancy black car, long and shiny, pulled up right next to the curb. It was a luxury car that seemed completely out of place on this rundown street. A well-dressed man, maybe around 60 years old, got out. His suit was perfect, clearly very expensive, and his shoes shiny. He looked around with sharp, smart eyes until they landed directly on me, locking his gaze onto mine. He walked straight toward me without stopping, with the confidence of a man who knows exactly what he wants. I was confused and looked around, thinking he must be looking for someone else, maybe a delivery person. But he stopped right in front of me and said something that made me freeze completely. "You're the man I'm searching for." I blinked, completely lost and confused. "Me? Sir, I think you have the wrong person. I'm just... me." The man shook his head in a determined way. "No, I don't. Yesterday evening, you gave your very last meal to an old couple, Walter and Eleanor." My jaw dropped a little. I couldn't hide my surprise. How did this complete stranger know that? It felt like something so private had been made public. The man kept talking, his voice calm and serious. "Walter and Eleanor are very close friends of mine, dear friends of the family. They told me everything that happened, including your stubborn refusal to take back a piece. I needed to come and see for myself the kind of man who still shows true generosity in such a harsh, cold world, especially when he himself is starving." Buddy barked once, a short, sharp sound, as if he agreed completely with the man's assessment. I sat there, completely speechless, wondering if this was real luck or just some weird dream. The man introduced himself as Silas Thorne. He was a very wealthy and famous business owner in the city. Everyone knew his name from the newspapers and TV. But what impressed me wasn't his money. It was the honest, real look in his eyes, a look that cut straight through my worn-out appearance. Silas Thorne didn't look down on me with pity, the way most people did. He looked at me with deep respect, like I was someone important. "I believe people show their best side when they have absolutely nothing left to lose," Silas Thorne said calmly. "That's when character truly shows. And you, Ethan, showed more good character than men who have millions in the bank. That kind of big heart is hard to find in this world, and I simply can't ignore it." I shifted around, feeling very uncomfortable. I wasn't used to hearing compliments. Praise felt strange after years of silence and being ignored. Most people just walked past me as if I were a piece of the street, a dirty obstacle to step around. "I just did what felt like the right thing to do, sir," I mumbled, feeling embarrassed by the attention. Silas Thorne smiled gently, his eyes twinkling. "Exactly, Ethan. That's why it matters so much. Anyone can be generous when they have plenty. It takes a hero to be generous when they have only one thing." He looked at me closely, not judging my dirty clothes or my untrimmed beard. "Tell me something," he asked. "If you could get another chance at life, a fresh start, a clean slate, what would you choose to do?" The question hit me hard, reaching a place deep inside me that had been asleep for years. I remembered my younger days, my dreams of working hard and being someone my family could be proud of, maybe even starting a small business. But I stopped, scared to wish for anything, scared to hope again, because the pain of failure was still so real. "I don't know, sir," I finally admitted, the words catching in my throat. "I've been down here for so long, I don't even remember what it's like to have a dream, to plan for a tomorrow. Silas Thorne nodded, like he expected me to say that. He put a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder, a gesture of unexpected friendship. Then let me remind you, every person deserves a new chance, a new beginning, and I believe you are ready for yours right now. Your debt to the world is paid. For the first time in years, I felt a tiny spark of possibility inside me, a thrilling, nervous energy. Something I thought was dead came back to life. Buddy wagged his tail like crazy, jumping up and down, sensing the huge change happening to us. The whole street suddenly seemed brighter and full of promise. Silas Thorne offered to buy me a hot meal right then. We walked into the cafe together. The smell of fresh coffee and hot bread almost made me dizzy, and my stomach immediately rebelled with a loud protest. I hadn't been inside a place like that in years, and I felt like a wild animal entering a house. The waiter looked unsure about my ragged clothes, eyeing me nervously, but Silas Thorne's calm presence and confident nod made him ignore it. He ordered a huge full breakfast for me: eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee. I ate slowly, savoring every single bite, and my eyes started to burn with tears of pure gratitude. "Thank you," I whispered, not just for the food, but for reminding me that kindness still existed in the world and that I was worth saving. As we ate, Silas Thorne asked me about my life. I was nervous at first, but I slowly told him everything, the good and the bad. I told him about losing my job, my house, and my family. I told him about the freezing nights and how many times I went hungry, so Buddy could have a little food. I told him about all the times people walked by and pretended I wasn't there, treating me like air. Silas Thorne listened carefully, never interrupting me once, just watching me with that respectful gaze. His face showed deep care and understanding. "Life really knocked you down, Ethan," he said finally, "but it didn't take away your good heart. That makes you stronger than almost anyone I know. That's true wealth." I looked down, feeling shy, but also a small feeling of pride starting up inside me, a tiny flicker of self-worth. After we finished, Silas Thorne gave me a huge surprise. He had a plan for me, a way out. "I run many different companies, from logistics to manufacturing," he said, "and I need people I can trust completely, people whose word is their bond. I don't care about fancy suits or perfect paperwork right now. I need people with real honesty. I want you to come and work for me, starting immediately." I froze, totally shocked. "Me? Sir? I don't even have clean clothes. I haven't worked in a real building in years." Silas Thorne laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Clothes can be bought easily, skills can be learned quickly, but honesty and compassion, you can't teach those things. They come from within. And you, Ethan, have already proved you have both, under the toughest test possible." The importance of the moment was heavy on me, almost overwhelming. For years I had believed I was useless, trash. Now, a successful man saw something valuable in me. I hesitated, worried I would mess it up, worried I'd fail him and end up back on the street. But Silas Thorne's steady gaze calmed me down. "Don't worry so much about failing," he said gently. "Worry about missing the chance. Just say yes to the chance." I finally nodded my head, my heart racing fast with fear and hope mixed together. "All right, sir," I said, my voice shaky. "I'll try my very hardest. I promise I won't let you down." Buddy barked happily and wagged his tail like a wild thing, as if he was sealing the deal with a celebratory cheer. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a beggar on the street anymore. I felt like a man starting a brand new life. The hunger, the cold, the terrible nights. All of it started to feel far away, fading into a bad dream. Hope was finally in front of me, real and touchable. That evening, Silas Thorne dropped me off at a decent shelter he knew. It was clean and safe. I looked up at the sky, and the stars seemed brighter than usual, like the whole universe approved of my new beginning. "We're going to be okay, Buddy," I whispered to my dog, wrapping my arms around him. Buddy pressed close to me, giving me silent comfort. For the first time in years, I truly believed those words, deep in my bones. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't alone anymore. I had an advocate and a chance. I realized that one small act of kindness had turned on a light for a completely new journey. I had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. By giving away my only meal, I had opened a door to something much bigger than myself. The kindness I gave out had come back to me, multiplied by a powerful hand, proving that even the smallest sacrifice can change lives completely. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was finally starting to live again, to build something new. As Buddy barked happily at the moon, I smiled, ready for whatever came next. My story, which was once so sad, was finally becoming a story of hope. I lay awake on the shelter cot that night, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept playing the day over and over, giving away the sandwich, meeting Silas Thorne, hearing him say, "I believe in you." It felt totally fake, like a dream I would wake up from soon and find myself back on the cold pavement. But Buddy was snoring softly at my feet, and that sound told me it was all real. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a direction, a purpose. Tomorrow was going to be the first step towards something I hadn't had in a long, long time, a real opportunity. It was both scary and incredibly exciting. The next morning, Silas Thorne showed up at the shelter again, right on time. He was holding a bag full of brand new clothes, simple but sturdy, and stuff for washing up. "You can't start a new journey dressed like this," he said with a warm smile. "We need you to look the part of a future supervisor." I felt a little embarrassed about my smell and my appearance, but I was mostly just thankful. After a long, hot shower, the first real one in months, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. My hair was neat, my beard was trimmed, and the simple clothes made me look like a normal man again, not a shadow. I felt a surge of forgotten confidence. Buddy barked happily, clearly proud of how I looked, sniffing my clean clothes approvingly. Silas Thorne drove me to one of his big warehouses, a massive building full of machinery. It was busy, full of people moving things and working hard, making the place buzz with energy. "This work isn't exciting, Ethan," Silas Thorne explained to me as we walked through the noise. "It's manual labor to start, but it is honest work, and it's a strong start. You'll learn the business from the very bottom up." I was nervous, but absolutely determined to succeed and make him proud. My first task was packing and moving boxes in the shipping area. I lifted, carried, and sorted boxes and things with all my strength. My muscles ached from the hard, unexpected work, but I kept going, pushing past the pain and the exhaustion. Buddy sat patiently nearby, technically against the rules, but Silas Thorne insisted he stay. Buddy was my silent guard and my motivation. The other workers were suspicious at first. They whispered about the homeless guy Silas Thorne had hired, wondering if I was a charity case or a spy. Some made rude jokes about my past. But as the days passed, they started to see how hard I worked, how humble I was, and how honest I behaved, never taking a break that wasn't earned. Slowly, their doubt turned into respect. They saw I wasn't just clocking time, I was working with my whole heart. A few days later, an older worker, named Mitch, even offered me a sip of his coffee. It felt like a bigger victory than any paycheck. At the end of my first week, Silas Thorne himself came down and handed me my paycheck envelope. Tears came to my eyes as I held the envelope, thick with cash. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but to me, it felt like a massive treasure, a trophy of my hard work. "This is the first money I've actually earned in years, sir," I whispered, looking at the numbers. I immediately bought the best dog food for Buddy, treating him like a king. That night, we shared a simple dinner together in the shelter, and I couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't just food. It was about getting my dignity back. Every bite reminded me that I was rebuilding my life, piece by small piece, brick by brick. But life wasn't perfect yet. One evening, as I walked home, feeling good about myself, I passed the same corner shop where I had given away my last sandwich. A group of guys sitting there, the ones who usually looked down on me, yelled mean things at me. "Look who thinks he's important now, with his fancy clean shirt," one of them shouted, making fun of my clean clothes. The old shame tried to rush back into my heart, making me want to run and hide, but I kept walking, Buddy right by my side. I gripped the paper bag containing Buddy's dinner tighter. "I am not the person I used to be," I whispered to myself, remembering the look on Walter and Eleanor's faces. That night, Silas Thorne's words came back to me again. Clothes can be bought, skills can be learned, but integrity can't be taught. That was my shield against their cruel words. I worked incredibly hard, always proving that I was dependable, always the first to volunteer for the toughest tasks. I came in early, stayed late, and always helped others if they needed it, covering shifts or fixing broken equipment. Soon the floor managers started noticing my dedication and work ethic. After only a few months, Silas Thorne called me into his office and gave me a promotion to a small supervisor job, managing the afternoon crew. I was stunned. "I'm not a leader, sir," I told him, protesting, feeling totally unprepared. But Silas Thorne just shook his head. "You've been leading all this time, Ethan, just by being a good example, by inspiring others." The other workers, who used to be suspicious, now asked me for advice on how to handle difficult deliveries or conflicts. Slowly, I realized that being a leader wasn't about yelling orders or having a fancy title. It was about listening and helping others, just like I had helped Walter and Eleanor that cold night. Leadership was just kindness in a work uniform. With the money I saved, I rented a small apartment. It was nothing fancy, just one room with a faucet that dripped water and a window facing a brick wall. But it was home. I bought a real bed for the first time in years. Buddy stretched out on the blanket, sighing contentedly, wagging his tail slowly, clearly loving the soft warmth. That night, I lit a single candle, ate a simple warm soup, and whispered, "We made it, buddy. We finally made it." My heart was full of thanks. I had climbed from a cold sidewalk to a warm bed, a journey few people could understand. I knew I couldn't waste this second chance Silas Thorne had given me. One weekend, after getting a new pair of boots, I went back to the corner where I had met Walter and Eleanor. To my surprise, they were sitting there together, though they looked a little better now. When they saw me, their faces lit up completely, like the sun had come out. "Ethan!" Eleanor cried out, getting up stiffly and giving me a huge hug. Walter shook my hand firmly. I told them about Silas Thorne, my new supervisor job, and my apartment. They cried happy tears, hugging me again. "You gave us so much hope that night," Walter said, holding my hand tightly. "We thought the world had completely forgotten us, but your kindness told us to keep fighting." We found a small room to rent after that. We shared coffee from a thermos and laughed together, 3 friends connected by survival and being thankful. News about my transformation started to spread around the city, first through the company, then through the local press. People who had once ignored me now stopped to greet me respectfully. Some even asked me for advice on how to overcome their own struggles. I felt awkward with the attention, but Silas Thorne reminded me, "Your story isn't just for you, Ethan. It's for everyone who needs hope, who thinks their chance is gone." I started speaking at different shelters, telling other homeless people not to give up. I didn't hide how painful and cruel life on the street was, but I reminded them that one single act of kindness, whether giving or receiving it, could truly change everything and start a chain reaction. Buddy always came with me to the speeches, sitting calmly by my side on the stage. His calm presence made even the saddest people feel a little better. He was my partner in hope and my constant reminder of where I came from. Months went by, and Silas Thorne invited me to a fancy charity event, a gala, where he introduced me to many important people. I was nervous. I was scared the rich people would look down on me, judging my past. But Silas Thorne told me, "They need to hear your story, Ethan. It's more powerful than their money." Dressed in a suit Silas Thorne lent me, I walked into the huge hall, feeling totally out of place, but standing tall. But when I spoke about my life, how I went from being hungry to being generous, and from feeling hopeless to having hope, the whole audience was very moved. They clapped so loud the sound thundered through the hall. For the first time, I knew my story was a light for others, a story of redemption. At the party, a journalist came up to me, her eyes shining. She had heard my entire speech and said it was the most real thing she had heard all year. "Your story deserves to be shared with everyone, nationwide," she told me seriously. Soon after, a major article about Buddy and me was in the city's biggest newspaper, then picked up by national news. The headline said, "From the street to a second chance, a man and his dog who chose kindness over survival." The story became super popular, spreading far beyond our city. Messages of support poured in. People donated money to shelters, all because I inspired them to believe in change. I couldn't believe it. I had once been invisible, and now the whole world was listening to me. But with all the attention came problems. Not everyone was nice. Some critics said my story was fake, that I was just lucky, or that Silas Thorne staged the whole thing. Others made fun of the hobo who got rich and was now preaching to others. At first, their mean words hurt me deep inside. I felt the old shame coming back, whispering doubts in my ear. But Silas Thorne's advice helped me again. Your real worth isn't in what they say, Ethan. It's only in what you do. Let your actions be louder than their words. I decided I would keep proving myself, not by giving speeches, but by consistently doing good things and working hard. That was something no one could take away from me. I used my new power and influence to help people without homes in a practical way. I talked to city leaders, pushing them to build better, safer shelters and create fair job programs for those who needed a second start. I learned how city politics worked, which was much harder than moving boxes. Some doors closed immediately, but others started to open slowly. Slowly. Things in the city started to get better for the homeless community. Every time we made progress, whether it was opening a new resource center or securing funding for a job training course, I felt proud, not for myself, but for every person still sleeping outside in the cold. Buddy walked beside me, even at the important meetings, his wagging tail making the serious officials smile and reminding everyone what truly mattered. Together, we became symbols of not giving up on people. One deep winter night, several years into my new life, I walked past the cafe where Silas Thorne had first bought me breakfast. I saw a homeless man sitting outside, shivering violently with a small dog at his feet, huddled for warmth. The sight was painful, a direct reflection of my own past. Without thinking, I went straight into the cafe, bought a hot meal and a huge coffee, and handed it to him, exactly as Silas Thorne had done for me. The man's tears and quiet, shocked thank you made everything feel complete. In that moment, I realized I had become the person Silas Thorne had been for me, a lifeline, a turning point. Years went by quickly. I was no longer called the hobo on the corner. I was a respected advocate, a director of a nonprofit, a man who had completely rebuilt his life with honesty and grace. But I never forgot the night I gave away my last meal. I never forgot the hunger, the cold, or the deep shame of being ignored. Because I remembered, I never stopped helping others. Every sandwich I bought for a stranger, every hand I offered, was my way of paying back the kindness that had saved me. It was my duty and my passion. My whole life was now a wonderful cycle of giving, where the pain of the past was used for good. Through it all, Buddy was always there, his fur turning gray with age, his walk slower, but his heart just as big. The dog who suffered every hardship with me now lived a happy life, with warmth, good food, and endless love. People loved Buddy, calling him the hero dog, the one who saw the good in me when no one else did. I always laughed when I heard that. He's the hero, I would say. He kept me going when I wanted to quit everything, just by being there. Buddy, now very old and slow, would just wag his tail proudly from his soft bed. Our connection was unbreakable, built on pain, survival, and love that lasted a lifetime. One evening, sitting in my nice apartment, a place I owned now, I thought about the whole amazing journey. I thought about Walter and Eleanor, about Silas Thorne, and most of all, about that first sandwich. I finally understood the truth. What I thought was my lowest point, giving away my only food, facing a night of deeper hunger, had actually been the start of everything good that happened later. Sacrifice led to a new life. Compassion brought hope, and hope built a life worth living, a life of purpose. My eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of pure thankfulness and peace. I eventually opened a small community center with Silas Thorne's help, a place designed to offer second chances. It became a safe place for homeless people to eat, rest, and find job training and honest work. On the main wall, I hung a framed picture of Buddy and me from the fancy party years before. Underneath it, a simple phrase was written, painted in bold letters: "Kindness can change everything." People often asked about it, and I would tell them the whole story, watching as their eyes filled with inspiration. My difficult past had become a powerful gift for the future, a tool for good. Even though my life was completely different, surrounded by success and comfort, I never stopped calling myself a man who used to be homeless. I wore that title with pride, not as shame, but as proof of where I had come from and how far I had traveled and what a second chance could do. To me, the success wasn't about money or being famous. It was about remembering the simple truth. Even in the darkest, coldest moments, when you have nothing left to give, you can still choose to be kind. And sometimes, that one choice changes the entire world, not just your own. On a quiet, snowy night, several years later, I stood at the window of the center, watching the snow fall gently outside. Buddy, curled up in his favorite bed next to my desk, was old and tired. I walked over and knelt beside him, stroking his soft, graying head. "We did it, Buddy," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Buddy looked up, gave one last soft tail wag just for me, and then closed his eyes peacefully, taking his final, quiet breath. My heart felt heavy with the loss of my best friend, but I smiled through the tears. Our journey had taught me the most important lesson in the world, a lesson I would carry forward forever. Kindness, even from the person who has the least, has the power to save lives.